Question of the day. What is your favorite storytelling game? Now, by this, I don't necessarily mean a game in which you're telling stories through the narrative of the gameplay. No, I mean one in which you come up with the story and you have to tell it. And the better you tell it, well, determines how well you do in the game. Because today we're taking a look at a game called Mekhane. I think it's Mekhane. I looked it up. It's Mekhane. It's Greek. I do know that. And it's like Mu, Epsilon, I think it's Chi, Eta, Nu, Ada? I don't know. Regardless, so you can tell me if you want in the pronunciations. It's a Greek word for a crane in theaters, and the big crane would move it in 600 AD or so. No, 600 BC. I don't know. Regardless, look it up and tell me the right pronunciation. But I'm pretty sure the Koine Greek or the Greek at the time would have been Mekhane or High Greek, whatever. Regardless, that's not why you're here. The game is all about narrative. You do have cards, yes. But you are telling the story, not your character. You are verbally telling the story based on certain parameters. You're trying to win by having your character, the one that you, playing as a god, are trying to influence so that fate works out in your favor and the character that you're rooting for wins. Yes, very Greek pantheon sort of style story, but with modern elements in the cards. It's an interesting one for sure. Let's take a look at what this game offers. I'm not even going to try to say it again, and we will come back up from there. So here are the components of the game. You've got your tail cards, your fate cards, your destiny cards, your location, your danger, and your character cards. Let's take a look at the art first. I wanted to show you this. I love that the difference in art styles. Look at how many different art styles you're dealing with here, from comic book art to more Cal Arts tech, from kind of this interesting, this kind of stuff. It looks like Harry Crumb drew some of these, some of them look like, what's the guy's name who did Sweet Tooth drew them? Some of them just very interesting, different styles of art here. And the same thing goes for all the different tail cards here. A lot of just interesting, crazy looking art for crazy different events and things. Hot chili pepper. There's a ritual dagger, sort of, just soup, making potions, soup, whatever, roots. There's a stink bomb. And all the art on this is different too. You're making Lucille, just not quite there yet. So you then have the location. So what's going to happen is the Fate player versus not really versus, because the Fate player can't win. The Fate player is kind of like the chisel, if you were in Detective, right? So you have the Fate player gets a location card and a danger card. So let's just say we are at the junkyard, and our danger for this game is giant robots form themselves out of the junkyard, essentially. Now that's me making that story up, which is what you're going to be doing as well. Everyone's going to get one of these cards here because you're going to have a set of character cards laid out and the position of the number here. So let's just say we have the character cards laid out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for now, just for now. And so let's just say I have 5. So I would need Roy to live. If Roy doesn't live and nobody else has a person who lives, we go by our second number. But I need Roy to live, or I need Luis to live if nobody else wins with their first choice. The way this works is on your turn as a god character, you're going to take a tail card from your hand, and you're going to play it below this and say, Roy was driving a train. Oh, you can't see. I just realized it's off frame. My bad. Roy was driving a train and terrible, the robot just burst forth from the blah, blah, blah. Whatever. It doesn't matter. You make up the story and tell it. Then someone else will go out of their cards. Let's just see if I can do this on the spot. But Hanwell realized one day that she woke up in this wonderful world of ice and saw that in her crystal ball of ice there was a danger happening, blah, 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 and she raced herself. Anyway, you're telling a story. None of it has to make sense. None of it has to be coherent, except for the fact the Fate player at the end of the round is going to decide which of these characters dies. They will play a tail card and tell how they die. So Sophia, lo and behold, didn't realize that she was eating poisonous pollinated plants, or I don't know, it doesn't matter. The reason I'm struggling with this is you have to come up with this stuff on the fly. And the Fate player determines who's doing the best job, essentially, or what they really want. It's weird because Fate is just kind of like Fate. It just, the Greek form of Fate, it does what it wants to do. Now, some obvious technique here is you're not going to want to just try to instantly save the character that's on your card every time by doing some sort of narrative structure. You're going to kind of have to play smart to throw off Fate, potentially, to hopefully they will not try to kill your character. So maybe they think that you're trying to protect Luis, but you're really trying to protect Roy. So you're maybe putting attention on Luis, or putting negative attention on Roy, to where they think, well, clearly that's not that character. So ideally, it's one of those things where it's useful to play strategically to throw off fate, but not to be too obvious and not to be too subtle. So there's no hard and fast rule because, again, it's up to the subjective nature of your fate player. You might think you've done the best job to rescue your character in that they still die. So the game plays over 6 rounds. You'll have 6 rows of cards with different tails. Once the fate player has killed off everybody but one, you'll check your destiny cards. The player with that character left standing wins the game. So that's how you play Mekhane. Mekhane. You want to say it like that? Mekhane, all right? That's how we do it here in the South. I don't know. I really don't know. Regardless. Let's talk first and foremost things that I really like about this game. Number one, art. The art is fantastic. It is some of the best looking art, and here's why. Because there's so many different styles. If you look at the character cards alone, you're going to see styles that range from Harry Crumb to Calla Institute of Arts, which I'm not a fan of. You heard me rail on this on the last video. I'm not a fan of the Steven Universe type art, but if you like that, it's in here. But there's also more realistic stuff, and then there's also some more like almost political satire style art. So there's multiple styles of art in this game, not just in the character cards, but in the item cards, the tail cards. There's a lot of really interesting looking imagery in those tail cards from, different weapons, different sorts of things, the locations as well. So all in all, the game looks really good. It's a very pretty game. It's not pretty because it's really dark. That actually leads me to the next point. It's a very dark game. It's not a happy game. You're not telling happy, wonderful stories. You're telling dark stories that usually involve someone dying. Well, they all end up someone dying, but usually in very tragic and sadistic ways. So not a very bright game when it comes to that. It's kind of a dark game and very, very kind of maniacal almost. So there's that. If that's not your bag, then this theme is definitely not for you because you're telling stories about killing everybody but the last person, and you win if your pawn basically is still alive by surviving all the gruesome things. Now, that's the nuts and bolts, but here's where my analysis kind of breaks down. I'm not a fan of narrative games in which you have to tell the narrative, and essentially based on how well you tell the narrative is how well you do in the game. Here's what I mean by that. Some games have it where you have to tell a bit of the narrative and you might roll some dice, and really the dice mitigate your storytelling abilities. Not everybody's a talker. Not everybody's a storyteller. Not everybody's personality lends themselves to being, well, let's do this creative narrative. I get that. So there is an audience for this game. I remember there was a Fantasy Flight RPG like Baron Munchausen or something like that, which was an RPG, but you did it more through silly storytelling. Those that really love that game would like this game because it's more about yes, you play your card, you play it below it, hoping that fate will choose to kill someone else. And I'm assuming if your group is different, obviously, I'm assuming that it works differently in different. This is a hard one to review because my group doesn't necessarily work the same way your group does. And so the way we play doesn't necessarily mean you're going to play it the same way. So when you are playing as fate, you might think, oh, I'm going to give it to whoever's the funniest or whoever's the most creative or whoever's makes the most sense. It's interesting because there's no real hard, fast rule. It's whoever fate chooses. Okay, well, the fate card the fate player may just choose based on completely arbitrary reasons. So if you're looking to play this game to win, you're probably doing it wrong. You probably need to just play this game as an experience of fun narrative storytelling. Otherwise, it's just going to be a chore. You're going to be like, I don't want to tell a story. I want to win a game. Why would I play this? So if that's your personality where you're like, I don't want to tell stories, I want to win this game, skip this one 100%. If your personality is a little bit more like, I just want to sit around and tell silly stories and let's enjoy our time together as friends, 100% check this one out. Unless you're thrown by the dark subject matter. It's a very dark game. Again, you're not telling happy stories. I mean, I'm sure you could weave it somehow in which you could, but otherwise you're telling dark stories about how people are dying. So that is Mekhane. You can check it out, look at it. I don't know, whatever it's called. It's the Greek Crane game. That's that one. Let me know in the comments below what you think about narrative telling games where, like, even something so simple as Apples to Apples, where it's arbitrarily, subjectively voted upon who wins the round. Those can be real issues for people because of how it's determined based on what your group thinks. You might have made somebody mad earlier at dinner, and they're not going to tell you made them mad. They're just going to kind of be like, I didn't really like that comment that person made earlier about my favorite show, therefore I'm just going to kind of dislike everything. And like, my group would never do that. Really? We've all been there. So just let me know in the comments below about narrative gaming and all that stuff. I'm Bryan Drake on the Dice Tower. Make sure to let me know what you thought of this game, if you played it, and if it's your bag, if it's your game group bag, or if it's something like I'm saying where not really our style of game for our game group. It didn't work for us. So I'm Bryan Drake here on the Dash Tower. Make sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, etc. at Dash Tower Bryan. Until next time, we'll see you.